Well, good evening. This is Dave Jones with StormCenter Communications and GeoCollaborate. This is a 6 p.m. update on Hurricane Milton for the All Hazards Consortium and the Sensitive Information Sharing Environment. It's October 7th, 2024, and we have an incredible storm on our hands right now in the southern Gulf of Mexico. I say incredible because just meteorologically, the way that this thing has developed and intensified for me, I think goes beyond all of my experiences over the last 35 years dealing with hurricanes and tropical cyclones. Milton has winds of 180 miles per hour. You can see it spinning there in the southern Gulf of Mexico, approaching the northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. Thankfully, it looks like the eye will remain offshore, but places like Merida and others along the shoreline in the northern Yucatan will feel strong winds, very strong winds from Milton, and that will continue through the night tonight. Let me take this full screen and show you the latest statistics of what Milton has brought to us. So there it is. You can see a little bit of the sunset coming in the upper right-hand corner of this satellite imagery. This is the GOES satellite image. Let me zoom in on this a little bit here, just so we can get a little clearer picture on what's going on. Look at that eye of Milton. It is perfectly concentric, gravity waves emanating from the center. You can see these waves emanating out. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft flying through. Just about every time they fly through it, the pressure is lower. It's at 905 millibars. Here's the statistics. Right now, Hurricane Milton, 675 miles southwest of Tampa, Florida, with winds of 180 miles per hour, wind gusts to 200 miles per hour. Movement to the east at 10 miles per hour, and the pressure at 905 millibars. 905 millibars. Some of the models are taking it even deeper. With higher winds. We'll see what happens over the course of the next several hours. And indeed, this particular storm is shattering some record books here. I'll have some statistics for you in just a little bit during this particular briefing. So that's what you have for Milton for the statistics. I do want to show you GeoCollaborate full screen and show you what we're dealing with here. First of all, the first thing that's incredible here, and I'm going to move GeoCollaborate over here a little bit. I'll zoom in. This is called the best track that the National Hurricane Center keeps track of every point for every advisory and update. You can see that as just a potential tropical cyclone, it was drifting to the north, became a tropical storm, and then started moving to the east, and then dove to the south, to the east-southeast a little bit today. And now it's leveled out, sort of moving directly east. So the good thing is we don't expect the eye to pass over northern Yucatan Peninsula. And so that will spare Merida from the worst that Milton has to offer. But the other thing I want to point out is, look at this. In the center of each hurricane symbol is the category. And during the last 24 hours, look at this. Category 1. Then 1, then category 2, the next update, category 4, the next update, category 5. So this has just been an incredible system, and I've had questions from folks saying, how in the world could this deepen so rapidly? You need some special ingredients for hurricanes to deepen rapidly like this. Number one is you need warm enough sea surface temperatures. And here I'm going to turn on some of the ocean observation data that we have been collecting. This particular one that I just turned on is a drifter from the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. And you can see here, this one is just, it's freely drifting, reporting back a temperature of almost 85 degrees, 84.94 degrees. That is plenty of warmth and ocean heat content for a hurricane to deepen rapidly. That's not the only thing that it needs. And let me turn on another set of ocean observation platforms that are out here too. The National Data Buoy Center at NOAA in Stennis, Mississippi operates some other buoys. This one here, right here, has, look at this, winds gusting to 25. The storm has moved well off to the east now, but the significant wave height, 14.1 feet out here, and the storm is well to the east. But look at this, the water temperature, 82.2 degrees. So it's very, very warm in this area. We don't have a ton of buoys out here doing observations, but we do have observations. We also have satellite-based ocean sea surface temperature estimates, and I can turn that on here just for a moment as well. Let me go up here and turn on the sea surface temperatures for the ocean, and there you have it. So these are temperatures in the 80s, the mid 80s. If I zoom out here a little bit, you'll see that the temperatures are very warm throughout the entire forecast journey of Hurricane Milton. You can see some of these other drifter buoys, temperature 85.53, temperature here. In this buoy, no recent data. Some of these buoys need a little maintenance, so they're not operating properly. Water temperature at this one looks like it doesn't have a water temperature, has an air temperature of 81 degrees. Let's check this one out closer. There we go. There's a water temperature of 83.8 degrees off the coast of Florida, pretty well off the coast of Florida, and even closer up towards where landfall is forecast, water temperature 85.3 degrees. So there is a lot of ocean heat content for this system to pass through. That is one critical ingredient, warm sea surface temperatures and deep, because when they spin, they upwell, tend to upwell cooler water, but if the water is warm down deep, it's not really cooling the sea surface temperatures at all. The other thing we need is a lack of wind shear. We don't need winds trying to blow the hurricane apart. And when there is no wind shear, then the hurricane gets vertically stacked. That's what we're talking about here. I'll go back to the satellite loop here for a second. Look at that. That is the eye of the storm. It's almost like a chimney. It's clear through and through to the ocean bottom. And that is allowing efficient air evacuation through the hurricane. That means the winds are not blowing strong enough to tilt this chimney. Once the chimney gets tilted, then the aerodynamics and the dynamics are not efficient enough to allow the hurricane to keep strengthening. It will start to weaken after that. And the third thing you need is atmospheric moisture. And there is plenty of atmospheric moisture with this system. There is a ton of atmospheric moisture, and you can see it streaming off from the hurricane. And you can see it, I'll back out a little bit more here, streaming out towards Florida. And that is where we're having some of it precipitate out as heavy storms and flooding in South Florida. There is a high likelihood over the next 24 hours of flooding in South Florida, including the Miami area. So back to GeoCollaborate. Let me just show you what's going on here with the progress and the forecast of Milton. So each one of these points along the forecast track, we can interrogate and see what the forecast intensity is forecast by the National Hurricane Center. So even this close to Florida, look at that. That's not very close to Florida. Winds of 145 miles per hour. So forecasting it to be a Cat 4 hurricane with a very large wind field. Cat 4 hurricane with a large wind field here. And that is, what is the time? At 1 o'clock on the 9th. So that's Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. The coast will start to feel tropical storm force winds, but the center of the storm will be in this location, generally speaking, in this location. There are still some errors where it could be that far off into the future. But then this is where landfall is expected to be. I have the center line on here just so I can click on the intensity of the hurricane. but even if it varies just a little bit, won't make a whole big difference in storm surge. Although if it does move and make landfall south of Tampa Bay, the storm surge in Tampa Bay won't be as large. The National Hurricane Center has upped it from 8 to 12 feet to 10 to 15 feet in Tampa Bay. That is the forecast storm surge given this trajectory of the hurricane. This is the forecast for 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. 1 o'clock in the morning, we have a 125-mile-an-hour hurricane barreling through Tampa Bay. I can't stress enough, this is a worst-case scenario for Tampa Bay and storm surge. This is going to push so much water into Tampa Bay that it's going to overflow into the city significantly. We are going to have significant impacts to critical infrastructure with the movement along this path. This is one that people have studied for years and talked about the impacts of landfalling hurricane at this angle and at this location. It's going to push water up 10 to 15 feet in clear water, all the way down to St. Pete Beach, Pass-a-Grille, into Tampa Bay, and on down towards Sarasota, Anna Maria Island, and all the barrier islands there. I want to show you now the wind field forecast. Remember, I showed this to you last time. This gets updated every time the National Hurricane Center updates the forecast. I'm going to turn on the wind field forecast. And that is the expected wind radii. And I'm going to turn off the sea surface temperature data so we can see what it looks like without all those colors. There we go. So this is the forecast wind radii for the hurricane at each one of the anchor points that the Hurricane Center has issued. And I want to focus in on this one here out at sea, where it's a major hurricane, 145 mile per hour winds. And look at this. The tropical storm force winds are already well on shore in southwest Florida, onshore in Tampa and St. Pete, and creating surge already through the Keys and into southwest Florida. So we're going to be seeing surge build up during the evening tomorrow night, and then all day Wednesday, and then get really big Wednesday afternoon. That's where we're going to start to see surge coming in to the West Coast because of this powerful storm. The other thing I want to point out here is the size of the storm. I'm zooming out here a little bit. Let me get rid of all these buoys here as well in the ocean observation platforms, just to clear things up a little bit. Look at the size of the storm here, down where it is close to the Yucatan Peninsula. This is the wind field as it is about now. And then as it goes through an eye wall replacement cycle, it will expand in size. And look at this. It's going to be 3 times larger than it is currently, with 145 mile per hour winds at this point, with tropical storm force winds pushing a ton of water towards southwest Florida. Folks, this is going to result in storm surges that will make Helene storm surge that happened a week and a half ago like nothing. This is going to be significant surge. That is why mandatory evacuations are being issued, one of which in Pinellas County, they just issued mandatory evacuations in zones A, B, and C. And the Pinellas County Sheriff, if you recall the last update I did, was not mincing words. Number one, it's going to be bad. And number two, if you're going to keep your restaurants or anything open, we're going to shut you down and you need to leave. So this is how wide the wind field is going to be. And if you're thinking about evacuating, we're talking about getting out all the way to Tallahassee, which is still recovering from Helene damage, or down to Miami if you want to take the risk in going down that far. So we're talking about quite a wide wind field, and the error bars between on either side of Tampa Bay. So my advice for staging utility crews, stage in southern Georgia, so you can come down and get into the impacted area as soon as it's safe. We are going to have very heavy rains, so likelihood of flooding. That fresh water coming down, particularly combined with salt water coming inland, is going to make for very difficult water drainage until that all leaves as the hurricane passes by and heads off into the Atlantic. Now, this wind field is also going to generate surge on the eastern side of Florida and perhaps into Georgia as well. So we see how large the hurricane is going to get. That's going to impact basically the whole state of Florida, not the Panhandle and extreme southern Florida. Down in the Keys, you will get some tropical storm force winds as the storm is approaching from the southwest. So I'm going to turn off the wind field prediction. And so I'm going to go in here and turn that off. But I do want to turn on the expected arrival of tropical storm force winds. This is the most reasonable arrival of tropical storm force winds. So we're talking in the Keys down here, Wednesday at 8 a.m. Wednesday at 8 a.m., tropical storm force winds arriving. And then I'll zoom in a little bit more into Tampa by about noon. This is 8 a.m., 9, 10, 11, 12, and then this is 8 p.m. So I would say between 12 and 2 o'clock, tropical storm force winds arriving in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area, earlier in Sarasota, earlier in Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte, earlier in Cape Coral and Naples. But essentially Wednesday, 8 p.m., coming through central Florida with tropical storm force winds. Then about 10 or 11 p.m., arriving in Orlando. There is likely to be hurricane force winds in Orlando along this path. And I will show you in just a minute the probability of tropical storm force winds. So then we're off the coast on Thursday at 8 a.m. with tropical storm force winds, maybe reaching the South Carolina coast. That may be unlikely, but there's going to be some surge coming in. So here I turned on the tropical storm force wind probabilities. The probability that these areas will receive tropical storm force winds. Look at this. The purple is 90 to 100%. That is greater than 90%. So you're pretty much in the envelope of tropical storm force winds, and then hurricane force winds are a little bit narrower through this track right here. So Orlando, you're in a hurricane warning. St. Petersburg, Tampa, you're in a hurricane warning. That has been issued by the National Hurricane Center. And there are a number of other advisories that have been issued as well. There's a storm surge warning for the west coast of Florida from Flamingo northward to the Suwannee River, including Charlotte Harbor and Tampa Bay. That's a storm surge warning. All because of this track. This is one of the worst case scenarios for Tampa Bay. And if you've been ordered to evacuate, please evacuate. I'm going to turn this probability of winds off because I want to show you the storm surge. So here are the storm surge numbers for Southwest Florida, extreme Southwest Florida. This is a 3 to 5 foot storm surge that we're expecting. And look how far away the storm is to make landfall. The wind field is just going to be so large, it's going to be pushing water inland. Up towards Naples, we're talking about 4 to 7 feet of storm surge, 4 to 7 feet. That's going to go pretty far inland and do damage to homes. 4 to 7 feet around Naples. Around Cape Coral and Punta Gorda, in this area here, we're talking about 6 to 10 feet of storm surge. 6 to 10 feet driven by these winds. The closer we get to the center of the storm surge is going to be higher. So this is 6 to 10 feet. It could even get larger if the storm does not weaken to a Cat 3. But as it does weaken, the wind field will also expand. So we have a lot of winds pushing a lot of water inland. This pink area is the large area of storm surge that's expected. Matter of fact, we're talking here in Tampa Bay, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. 10 to 15 feet is expected when Milton comes barreling ashore Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So this area of 10 to 15 feet continues up to Clearwater and ends roughly at the Pasco Pinellas County line. But then even up into Pasco County, we're talking about 5 to 10 feet. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to show is the AdCirc model. And the AdCirc model is showing a storm surge with the latest National Hurricane Center forecast. So I've gone down here to the Yucatan Peninsula where Milton is currently located. And you can see that the impact and the forecast is going to result in some storm surge here on the extreme northwest coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. And there will be some in Progreso and some all the way across the northern part. It's not going to be huge, but 5 to 6 feet is significant in these areas. So Merida will get strong winds, and also towards the coast, there will be storm surge of 5 to 6 feet. I want to follow this along and follow the storm along up to the Tampa Bay area. And I'm going to zoom out here and then move up because I want to show you the impact of a slight shift in the landfalling prediction from the National Hurricane Center. Remember, the last time we talked about this storm surge forecast, the forecast for landfall was south. It was around Sarasota. And these high numbers were further south. Look at the difference that it makes when we're talking about a landfall in St. Petersburg or the Clearwater area. These storm surge values skyrocket. That is why we're talking about a greater than 10-foot storm surge in Tampa Bay, also across Anna Maria Island, Bradenton Beach, Longboat Key, Siesta Key, Osprey, down towards Venice and South Venice. You're talking about a devastating storm surge across St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, Indian Shores, and up to Clearwater. Devastating storm surges. That is why the National Hurricane Center has this, the storm surge warning issued, and also these incredibly high storm surge numbers. Now, let me just mention, if I zoom out here just a little bit, as the storm crosses the state of Florida, it will have storm surges on the east coast of Florida as well. And you can see those depicted in the yellow lines and the blue lines across part of South Carolina, south of Charleston, or south of Myrtle Beach to Charleston, where there's a 1 to 3 foot potential for storm surge. In the yellow area here, we're talking a potential storm surge of 2 to 4 feet. In this whole area, 2 to 4 feet. And that includes the Space Coast and includes Cape Canaveral, Space Force Station. 2 to 4 foot storm surge expected on the backside of Milton when it reemerges over the ocean. This is going to be another very large wind field. And that wind field is going to have high impacts on the beaches and across the entire state of Florida. There's likely to be significant impacts to critical infrastructure such as electricity, distribution, and transmission, and also communications. There could be communication impacts. So this is what we're talking about, basically, along the west coast of Florida. Major impacts expected. Storm surge is going to be massive from Clearwater south through Tampa Bay, all the way south past Naples. It's going to be a massive storm surge. I can't express it any other way other than life-threatening. If you are staying in any of those areas, please write your Social Security number on your arm so authorities can identify you after the storm surge recedes. You heard the sheriff of Pinellas County the last time that I did an update. They're not fooling around. You must get out. If they have a mandatory evacuation, they're under no obligation to help come and rescue you if you call for help. He had 1,500 calls during Helene of people saying they needed to be rescued, and they could not get to those people. And 12 people died because they didn't leave the storm surge area when Helene was coming 100 miles off the coastline. So we're going to have high winds and intense rainfall as well across the Florida Peninsula. Disney World, Orlando is going to be right in the center of the path of this storm, so expect quite a bit of damage along that path. So I also want to tell you about Milton just for a moment, because I've had questions. How could this, when was the last time this ever happened? How could this happen? Well, I described earlier the necessity for the necessary conditions for a storm to rapidly intensify. The max winds of 180 miles an hour, this makes Milton the strongest hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico this late in the calendar year. We've never had a hurricane this late, as far as satellite records go back, which is about 1969. The old record was Rita on September 22nd of 2005. And Milton joins Michael as the only October Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is very, very significant. Now, for those of you who are wondering, who might be living near the coastline, how can you find out what your elevation is if you don't know it? Most phones have a compass app. And that compass app allows you to not only see directions, but it also tells you where what the elevation is. If you just set your phone right on the table, it will tell you your elevation. And that should convince you, if you are anywhere near an evacuation site and you're thinking you're going to stay, that you are not high enough and you need to get out as soon as possible. So on the Android app and the iPhone app, you can download the compass and see what your elevation is. The other thing is that if you lose communication, even if you've evacuated and you've lost power, you've lost communication, most of the phones, Android and iPhone, have an SOS capability that connects with satellite communications. I believe that's in the most recent phones, maybe back a generation or so, but try it. If you see SOS on your phones, you should still be able to use it if you find yourself in trouble. But if you're in an evacuation zone, that's where authorities are saying leave, because we won't be able to come and rescue you. That's it for this update. We have a tremendously large storm on our hands. This one is nothing to play with. It is barreling right across the Gulf of Mexico with 180 mile per hour winds, 200 mile per hour wind gusts. The winds may even get higher. The Hurricane Center is forecasting, I think, perhaps to 185 miles per hour before it starts to decrease a little bit in its wind intensity. But when it does that, the winds are going to spread out. That means a larger wind field and a bigger storm surge because it's pushing more water. So that's it for this update. I'm Dave Jones with StormCenter Communications and GeoCollaborate. Thanks for sticking with me on this one. I know it's a lot. I have a lot I wanted to show, but I didn't. I'll have another update tomorrow morning, and we'll see where Milton is at that time. We'll be watching it all through the night. Thank you for watching this video update. We'll be uploading this to the SISE hub for the All Hazards Consortium, sharing it on the Signal app, and hopefully it's providing some good information to enhance decision making. Thanks so much for watching. Again, I'm Dave Jones. Take care of yourself, and please take care of your neighbors.